Being called by my name just gets my heart racing. It's incredibly thrilling. In the dead of night, I stumbled upon Tanner and Rebecca, frolicking in the back seat of a car in the garage. Shocked by the unbelievable scene before me, I locked the two of them in the garage and headed back to my parents' house. I want to show those two, who've been making a fool of me, what real hell feels like. Back at my parents' house, I explained the situation to my parents and another person, asking for their cooperation in my revenge. Everyone agreed, and I resolved to make Tanner and Rebecca experience true hell. My name is Natasha. I'm a newlywed. I met my husband, Tanner, back in our student days. We were classmates in high school, worked together on committees, and had a few interactions. But that was the extent of our relationship. I never imagined that someone like him would approach me now, as adults. "Natasha, I really do love you," he said. Our relationship began right after graduating high school. During our final cultural festival as seniors, Tanner started to get involved with me, and we began to interact as friends. Despite barely knowing each other, he started pursuing me relentlessly right after graduation. I couldn't understand why a guy who was so popular among girls during our school days would be interested in someone like me. Even when I asked him why, he would simply say he was smitten, never providing a concrete reason. Suspicious of his motives, I spent 6 months investigating, but couldn't find any convincing reasons, and eventually, overwhelmed by his persistence, I accepted his proposal. If I just wanted to date and ditch someone, I wouldn't put in all this effort. "Can't you trust me already?" "I truly love you, Natasha," he said. Hearing those words, I began to consider trusting him. But as a novice in love, it took a lot of courage for me to date someone as popular as him. That's when I turned to my older sister, Rebecca, for advice. Rebecca was beautiful and stylish, rumored to be among the most popular in school, as I heard from her classmates. I thought consulting with Rebecca, who had plenty of experience in love, would help me find the answer. When I talked to her about it, her encouragement felt like a gentle push forward. "Just for dating, a playboy wouldn't spend 6 months. I really think Tanner is serious about you, Natasha. Why don't you accept it?" Rebecca's words convinced me to start a relationship with Tanner. A year went by. In the beginning, Tanner was incredibly kind. He treated me like a princess. He took me to my favorite places, and every anniversary, birthday, and event was celebrated with a surprise, making it feel like a dream. For someone inexperienced in love like me, all these felt like fairy tale moments, and I was thrilled to have taken the chance with him. Until the day we decided to get married. "What's with this filthy room? I like things clean. You know what happens if you turn this place into a dump, right?" After deciding to get married, we bought a new house. Tanner worked as a laborer in his father's company, earning around $40,000 a year. He didn't have the means to buy a house. Yet, disliking used things, Tanner insisted I stretch our finances to purchase a new home. Calling household management a hassle, he dumped all responsibilities on me, living freely himself. "This is your house too, so I wish you'd help with the cleaning. I have a job too, so let's support each other, okay? You can at least tidy up, can't you? I work as a nurse with irregular shifts." Tanner actually spends more time at home and earns $30,000 less than I do. Despite the significant differences in time and money, he doesn't cooperate at all. I cover all household expenses, while Tanner only spends his salary on leisure and consumables. Before marriage, he spoke of mutual support and striving together. But after moving in, Tanner changed completely. He became a total freeloader. I once tried to get him to cook, but the taste and his knife skills were disastrous. The house ended up a mess, and I gave up on having him cook. If I let him do the laundry, he'd throw everything in together, causing shrinkage and color bleeding. He was far from trustworthy. Even Mary, my mother-in-law, had concerns, but I never anticipated it being this bad until I saw it with my own eyes. "You're the one who told me not to do housework, right?" Now you're making it sound like it's my fault when you start getting called out? Initially, I patiently taught him household chores, but Tanner was short-tempered and prone to violence. Just mentioning household tasks triggered such reactions, and out of fear, I once said I'd handle everything myself to avoid his outbursts. But I'm only human. Nursing is many times harder than people think. My stamina has declined since my early 20s, making it tough to balance home life with work. And on top of that, the household chores have more than doubled compared to when I lived alone. I often wish I had extra hands. Is it so wrong to ask for help in such circumstances? Tanner becomes immediately enraged, showing his aggressive side whenever his sore spots are poked. Once, when I dared to stand up to him, he threw things against the wall and almost injured me. I've been scared of him and even considered divorce, but each time he would become uncharacteristically kind, showering me with love as if he were a different person. I'm sorry, Natasha. I'll never do this again. I truly value you. Please don't leave me. I genuinely love you. I can't live without you. Rarely feeling needed by others, I couldn't dismiss such affection from Tanner and saw no alternative but to forgive him. He was the first person I truly loved. I couldn't envision a life with good encounters after losing him. Such thoughts were reinforced by various things said by Rebecca and Tanner during our relationship. No one else would put up with someone like you, Natasha. If you leave Tanner, you might spend your life alone. At that time, I was completely dominated by the thought that no one but Tanner could love someone like me, a belief instilled by his manipulative words. Even when I thought about leaving, memories of our relationship and Tanner's need for me held me back. It's like the saying, the one who falls in love loses. I was completely ensnared by Tanner's manipulative tactics. I want to support you if I can, but housework is just not my thing. I'm counting on you for that. Please don't say such sad things. I'll try to do what I can. He probably noticed my fear after his outburst. As soon as he approached me, he embraced me and gently stroked my hair to calm me. Tanner was skilled at using both the carrot and the stick, always making me feel needed just when I thought all was lost. For someone shy and introverted like me, being needed and loved by someone was a way to affirm my existence. Tanner had great communication skills and was an observant person. He was adept at manipulating someone to the brink of life and death. I was frequently bullied during my school days, which affected my self-esteem. Tanner exploited this, convincing me he was the only one who needed me. He claimed to love and accept even my flaws. Little did I know at the time, this was all part of his manipulative tactics. To be honest, it never even crossed my mind. Until the day I witnessed that scene. As our first wedding anniversary approached, encouraged by my parents, we decided to have a wedding ceremony with Tanner. Rebecca had her wedding at a garden, but where do you plan to have yours? Maybe a church wedding would be nice? The decision to have a ceremony was partly due to my parents' suggestion. Dad and Mom have always been deeply concerned about me. They know I'm the kind to care for others, sometimes at my own expense, readily sacrificing myself for the sake of others. When I became a nurse, they worried if I could truly handle it. You have a kind heart that tends to overdo things. Remember, it's not good to always put others first. Take care of yourself too. Despite their worries, they were my biggest supporters when I decided to become a nurse. Dad's concern also came to the forefront when it came to my marriage. Usually not one to meddle, Dad for the first time wanted to have a serious talk with Tanner and invited him over. Natasha is our treasure. If anything happens to her, I'll never forgive you. Are you prepared to take care of her? Dad didn't hesitate to intimidate Tanner, who seemed nervous. But Tanner didn't flinch and insisted earnestly that he wanted to marry me. I also want a solemn atmosphere for the wedding, so maybe we should look for a church. I know I've been a burden to Natasha, so I want to make the main event especially wonderful for her. Lost in thought, Tanner's voice brought me back to reality. Seeing Tanner smile sheepishly made my heart race. I never imagined he thought that way. Partly because his words and his everyday actions are so different. I wish he would be more kind on regular days and not just on special occasions. If we could just eat together, watch movies in the living room and laugh, I'd be so happy. Why does Tanner have to say such awful things? Does he really love me? Does he really need me? Having little experience with relationships, I kept wondering if something was wrong with me. Maybe Tanner's lack of desire is because I'm lacking in some way. I must try harder. I convinced myself, suppressing any thoughts of confronting Tanner. Contrary to my feelings, Dad and Mom seemed impressed by Tanner's words, looking at him kindly. "You're lucky, Natasha, to marry such a good man." My parents thought Tanner was a good husband. And at that time, so did I. It's true, Natasha is so lucky. She's not good at much besides housework. Are you sure you're not missing anything, Tanner? Rebecca, who happened to be there, sat next to Tanner without hesitation. She flirtatiously placed her hand on Tanner's knee and looked up at him. No. That's not true at all. Rebecca is the opposite of me, sociable and beautiful. She's always fashionable and brand conscious. And thanks to her husband who runs an IT company, she lives a lavish lifestyle. Rebecca often looked down on me, belittling me to elevate herself. But she too was adept at getting her way, manipulating me skillfully. Back then, I didn't realize I was being used by Rebecca. I felt happy to be relied on and pampered. Is that so, Natasha? You too shouldn't let go of such a good man so easily either. After all, you're just a burden with no redeeming qualities. Rebecca! Such mockery was a routine occurrence. She used her pretty face and tears as weapons, pushing people away from me. Everyone seemed to side with Rebecca. The only exception was my parents. Mom always scolds Rebecca sharply whenever she mocks me. Seeing no way to turn the situation in her favor, Rebecca quickly leaves the scene, but the pain in my heart lingers. What was a joyful moment is ruined by Rebecca's words. Tanner, along with Dad and Mom, apologizes, but he just laughs it off, saying it's nothing. Deep down, I wish for some comforting words, but I don't have the courage to ask for such audacity. It's my fault, as always, I tell myself, accustomed to resolving things on my own. Time passed and it was now the day before the wedding. The ceremony was set to be held at a church, and today, Rebecca was visiting my house. She said it was closer to the venue from our place. Let's call it a night since it's early tomorrow. I'm borrowing your bed. After having dinner and a shower, we enjoyed some drinks. It was past 10 p.m., and we were all feeling the effects, so we decided to get some sleep. I would share the bed with Tanner, and Rebecca would sleep in my room. Around midnight, with the feeling of warmth vanish from the futon, the chills woke me up. Tanner? It was still autumn, a bit chilly for a nighttime stroll. Maybe he went to the grocery store without saying anything? It was unusual for Tanner to leave like that, so I decided to look around, starting with checking the car in the garage. That's when I heard it. No, Tanner! It sounded like Rebecca's voice coming from the direction of the car. Tanner's car was there, not looking like he went to the grocery store. Thinking Tanner might be nearby since Rebecca called his name, I walked towards the sound. Being called by my name just gets my heart racing. It's incredibly thrilling. I spotted the two in the back seat, engaged in something. Just as I was about to approach and call out, I witnessed an unbelievable scene. Rebecca, can you keep your voice down? It's impossible, Tanner, be gentler with me. The two of them were naked, embracing, caught in the midst of intimacy. Shocked and wordless, I collapsed on the spot. They didn't notice me, completely absorbed in each other. Maybe it was too hot with the windows up, or they needed some fresh air, but the car windows were open. Because of that, Rebecca's sugary voice and Tanner's animal-like breaths were audible. The disturbing sounds filled me with discomfort and nausea, and I crouched down, trying to hold back vomit. What's happening? What are Rebecca and Tanner doing? Is this a dream? Am I having a nightmare? Unable to believe the scene before me, I kept trying to escape reality. Oblivious to my presence, the two continued their act, engrossed in each other. Tanner's desire for Rebecca, something I've never experienced, painfully tore at my heart. And then, from the two of them, I heard words even more horrifying. "It's like a dream, to be connected with you like this. You really love me, don't you? You did tell me before that you've admired me since our school days." Rebecca's words, revealing a shocking truth, left me stunned and confused. Were Tanner and Rebecca acquainted since their school days? But how could Tanner have known Rebecca? "When I saw you at the cultural festival, you were just too dazzling. I used Natasha to get close to you. When I heard you were married, I couldn't hide my shock." Tanner's words brought back a memory. On the day of the high school festival, Rebecca, who was hunting for boys, visited my class's booth. There, as I played the role of a waitress in a cafe, being teased and mocked by Rebecca, Tanner had fallen for her at first sight. Learning that Tanner had targeted me for use since those days brought tears welling up in my eyes. "But now, I'm connected with you like this. When you approached me, it felt like a dream. And to suggest something so wicked, you really are someone not to be underestimated." Hearing this, my astonishment was apparent. Their relationship started with Rebecca seducing Tanner, who knew he had feelings for her. To be with the married Rebecca, Tanner had to marry me, become part of the family, and not arouse suspicion. Rebecca's husband, Scott, often traveled for work and was rarely at home. Becoming relatives with Rebecca, who was nearly free, meant their relationship would raise fewer suspicions. They reflected on the past, discussing their actions. Hearing this unbelievable truth, I quietly moved away from the scene. Unable to contain my tears, I ran to the entrance, weeping, and collapsed once I closed the door. I can't believe that they had been using me all along. And how they thought of me in such a way. It was unforgivable, absolutely unforgivable. Love turned into rage and hatred, and I, holding the keys, headed to the garage where the two of them were. The garage was secured with a shutter, and the entrance was the only way in or out. By the time I returned, both were exhausted, quietly sleeping in the back seat. Perhaps they never thought I would find out. With a sigh at their foolish actions, I slowly closed the shutter and locked it. Then, I headed to my parents' house, not far from here, and poured my heart out to Dad and Mom. "What's wrong, Natasha? At this hour? And your clothes?" Arriving in my pajamas, Dad was taken aback with his eyes wide. Mom, concerned, immediately let me into the house. Both were somehow awake, which made me wonder. It was unusual for them, with their regular lives, to be up at this time. Had something happened? With that question in mind, I stepped inside only to find Scott, of all people, sitting on the sofa. "Good evening, Natasha. What's going on? Why are you dressed like that? Did something happen?" Scott was indeed sincere and a gentleman. Too good for Rebecca, he too must have been deceived into marrying her. As I hesitated about whether to share the day's events, Scott seemed to sense something and spoke up. "Did you hear it too?" Scott asked. At that moment, my eyes widened in shock. "Hear what?" "This," Scott said, pulling out a recording device. The voices I heard from it left me speechless. "So bold to suggest something so wicked, you really are not to be underestimated." It was a recording of the very conversation I had overheard between Tanner and Rebecca. "How do you have this?" My voice rose in surprise, and I was visibly shaken. Scott, looking uncomfortable, started explaining. Rebecca had been reckless with money and men. He found out 3 months ago when someone from his company reported seeing Tanner and Rebecca entering a hotel. After discovering the affair, Scott hired a private investigator to gather evidence of their infidelity. Today, knowing Rebecca was visiting my house, the investigator intensely monitored her, capturing this recording. At first, I thought if money could make up for my absence and make Rebecca happy, I'd stay out of it. But when Tanner got involved, it was a different story. I couldn't stand it, knowing how much you cared for him. Scott had always cared for me like a real big brother. And he couldn't bear to see me hurt because of them. Just knowing how he cared was a relief to my heart. I was collecting evidence against Rebecca to confront her for a divorce. I got the decisive evidence today and came to discuss it with your parents. Turning to Dad and Mom, I saw them looking distressed. Dad was even apologizing profoundly to Scott. I'm sorry for Rebecca to do such a thing. We're deeply ashamed as parents. We know an apology won't make up for it. Please, do whatever you feel is necessary to find peace. Watching Mom cry and apologize, my heart ached. Please, lift your heads. It's not your fault. Those who used Natasha and committed these acts are the ones to blame. Though Scott must be hurting too, he remained composed and comforted my parents. After calming them down, he turned to me. Natasha, what are your wishes? I'm fine as long as I can sever ties with Rebecca. But you must want more than that. Yes. My wife seduced your husband. I bear some responsibility. I want to support you fully, so you can find closure. Empowered by his resolute gaze, I declared my desire for revenge. I want to show those two who belittled me what true hell feels like. Overwhelmed with anger and frustration, I let my tears flow freely. Looking up at Scott, I voiced my true feelings for the first time. I want them to taste despair. Leave the financial aspect to me. I'll do everything I can. What do you want to do with those two? Hearing Scott's words, I candidly voiced a plan that had come to mind. I have to say I was surprised at how quickly such a daunting idea had occurred to me. Scott, Dad, and Mom all agreed to cooperate upon hearing it. And so, our family's revenge plan commenced. Natasha! What were you thinking? How dare you lock us up like that? 2 days later, Tanner and Rebecca, finally escaping from the shutter, showed up at my parents' house. They were still in the same clothes from 3 days ago, likely not having showered. Their clothes were wrinkled and faintly sour-smelling. Rebecca's makeup was ruined, her face and attire a mess. Who do you think is responsible for being locked up like that? I calmly responded at the entrance. But my response seemed to infuriate them even more. Shut up! You think you can talk down to me like that, huh? How could you lock us up and leave us for 2 days? If it weren't for the service guy, who knows what could have happened to us? When we went back home, we found strangers and they showed us some contract and told it wasn't our house anymore. What's going on? Explain yourself. The truth was, with Scott's help, that garage was set to be demolished. Since the house also belonged to me, while they were locked up, I moved all the essentials to our family home. The house is now being rented out to an acquaintance. It was designed considering eventual cohabitation with our parents, so it found a tenant quickly due to its excellent accessibility. Tanner's belongings were haphazardly packed into bags and sent to his parents' house. With the people Scott brought in, the work was done swiftly and efficiently. The noise and the stink, give me a break. Just hearing those screams in the morning is enough to stress me out. I grimaced in disgust at their state. Tanner, unable to tolerate my expression, lunged at me. But Scott appeared and grabbed his arm, protecting me. Scott! You two really are despicable. A man who dares to raise his hand against a woman. What kind of character do you have? Aren't you ashamed? Why is Scott here, and even Mom and Dad? It's our family home, so naturally, Dad and Mom would be there. But what truly shocked Rebecca wasn't that. Everyone who used to dote on her now stood behind me, protecting me. She couldn't understand why no one was trying to help her. Don't you realize the situation you're in? What did you say? As Tanner shook off the restraining hand and scowled. Scott played the recording from the other day. What? We were being bugged. But how? Where? They didn't have any wearable devices or mobile phones on them, so it seemed impossible that they were bugged. While they were confused, Scott smirked mischievously. I've been aware of your affairs for a while now. That's why I hired an investigator to gather decisive evidence of your infidelity. Upon hearing Scott's words, Rebecca's face turned pale. She thought her affairs had gone unnoticed, never imagining she was under investigation. Overwhelmed by the professionalism of the investigators, Rebecca was speechless, as if engulfed in darkness. Never thought you'd provide such conclusive evidence. I was so surprised, I laughed, Scott said. That's a crime. Yeah. If we report this to the police. Do you two have any evidence of that? Scott countered. Their attempts to intimidate Scott were futile. His firm stance, showing no fear and words sounding like he was about to hunt them down, caused Tanner and Rebecca to falter. If you two, who are financially inferior to me, want to hire a lawyer and go to court, I'm more than ready. If I say I just happened to encounter you and recorded it, it doesn't prove I hired an investigator. If you want to challenge me, gather evidence that could defeat me first. Indeed, a savvy businessperson. His quick thinking is extraordinary. The two, unable to respond, switched their target to me. What about you locking us up? That's a serious crime. Do you have proof? What? Stunned by the question, Tanner was at a loss for words. Now it was my turn to corner them. There's no evidence that I locked you up, but there's proof of your affair on the garage's security cameras. I bet they captured some unsightly footage of you two getting into the car and doing indecent things. Hearing this, the color drained from their faces, and they began to back away in fear. I believed your words for years, thinking you truly cared for me. But it was all an act, just to connect with Rebecca and cheat on me. No, it's not like that. Natasha, please forgive me. I really love and no one else. Me too. What happened with Tanner was just a momentary lapse, nothing serious. I swear it's true. Please believe me, forgive me, Scott. Realizing their disadvantage, the two abruptly changed their tone and started apologizing. They were clinging to our feet, weeping and pleading for forgiveness in their disgraceful state. Let go. What? I said let go. I yelled at Tanner, and Scott shook Rebecca off. Why would anyone forgive you too? No matter what happens, I will never forgive you. No matter how much you apologize or beg, I will never forgive you. Rot in hell with your regrets. With an anger never shown before, the two were thoroughly intimidated and fled the house. Dad and Mom, who had been watching worriedly, came to comfort me, and Scott gently stroked my hair, saying I did well. At that moment, overwhelmed with relief, I broke down in tears. The harrowing days I endured felt like hell itself. Clinging to memories, I tried to endure, but I was reaching my limit. Before breaking down, I managed to end that life, and the feeling of liberation made my emotions erupt. Thus, I successfully executed my revenge on Rebecca and Tanner. They fled to Tanner's parents' house, but as I had already explained the situation, they were denied entry and turned away. Moreover, due to their misconduct, John, my father-in-law, refused to employ him any longer. Tanner was already problematic at the company, so it didn't take long for him to be disowned, as I learned later. Rebecca and Scott soon divorced. Despite Rebecca's pleas until the end, she lacked the financial means to contest the divorce settlement and had no choice but to accept Scott's terms. Naturally, Tanner and Rebecca were charged a significant sum for compensation, considering the cancellation of the wedding and all the preparations that were ruined. Thanks to Scott hiring an excellent lawyer, we managed to make the two sign an agreement ensuring they'd pay up, and now they are both working desperately to fulfill it. I explained the situation to everyone who was supposed to attend the wedding. They were all disillusioned but supportive, offering understanding and assistance. I also made sure to explain the situation to the neighbors when the two were locked in the shutter for 2 days. I didn't want any commotion or the police getting involved, which would jeopardize the plan. Being well liked by the neighbors and Rebecca being known as the unpleasant sister who always looked down on me, everyone sided with me. As a result, Tanner and Rebecca are now viewed coldly by everyone. Once living a lavish life, they now lead a life of poverty, struggling daily, considerably thinner, as I've heard from friends. 4 years have passed since the incident. I'm devoted to my work, and Scott is also busy with his own. Dad and Mom are living fulfilling days, supporting my life and career. They even encourage me to find happiness when I meet the right person, motivating me to look forward. Hoping to make them proud, I'm also investing in self-improvement. Laura here. Annabelle. Melissa. If you're there, please answer. I banged on the door loudly, but there was no response at all. Just as I was about to leave, thinking they might have gone out, I heard the sound of a key turning. When the door opened, there stood my granddaughter Melissa. She looked anxious, but her face lit up when she saw me. "Granny!" she exclaimed briefly and hugged me tightly. I picked up Melissa and went inside. The room was eerily quiet, and Annabelle was nowhere to be seen. "Melissa, did Annabelle go out somewhere?" Melissa just nodded in response to my question. As we moved further into the house and reached the living room, I noticed half-eaten snacks on the table. I put Melissa down and asked her again. "It's lunchtime, but you were eating snacks?" "Yeah. When Dad's not here, Santa Claus comes and brings me snacks." "Santa Claus? He comes on days when Dad's not here and brings lots of stuff. Mom looks so happy about it. But it's a secret from Dad. Because it would bother Santa Claus." Hearing this, I became certain of something. Annabelle's flashy outfit the other day was for meeting this Santa Claus. I immediately started to search the house for evidence. I am Laura. I work at a cafe near my home. I lost my husband about 20 years ago, and since then, I have been raising my son Nicholas on my own. Since my husband's passing, the regulars at the cafe have been looking out for me in various ways. With their support, Nicholas grew up well and became independent as a working adult. I shared this joy with all the regulars. A few years after Nicholas started working, he married a woman named Stephanie, and they had my granddaughter, Melissa. Lately, my greatest joy has been seeing Melissa. She seems to have taken a liking to me, which makes me incredibly happy. My hobby is knitting, and I make sweaters and hats, gifting them to her whenever I can. "Melissa, I knitted a sweater for you." Seeing the sweater I made, Stephanie also smiled warmly. "Thank you as always." "Melissa, make sure you thank her properly." "Thank you." She held the sweater I gave her dearly, humming a tune as she took it to her room. Watching her back, Stephanie and I talked about Melissa's future. Everything was supposed to be fulfilling. But misfortune strikes suddenly. Stephanie fell seriously ill. I took care of Melissa instead, praying fervently every day for Stephanie's recovery. Nicholas, too, was busy caring for Stephanie and comforting Melissa whenever he could. We believed Stephanie would recover. However, after years of fighting the illness, Stephanie passed away. But there was no time to grieve. We still had young Melissa. With Nicholas busy at work, I started to go to his house to take care of her. Seeing Stephanie's resemblance in my granddaughter's face, I vowed to do everything to make Melissa happy. A few years passed by. I was at Nicholas's house, cooking dinner for Melissa as usual. Nicholas returned from work with a serious look on his face. "Mom, I need to talk to you, just the two of us." He took Melissa to her room and returned alone after a while. I wondered what it was about. A bit anxious, I opened my mouth. "So, what's up?" Nicholas looked embarrassed. "Well, actually, I'm thinking of remarrying." "What?" I blurted out loudly. Then covered my mouth, worrying Melissa might hear. Nicholas continued seriously. "Sorry, I know it's shocking. I didn't intend to at first. But thinking of the future, I worry about Melissa being lonely." Indeed, Nicholas had a point. I'm taking care of her now, but there's no guarantee I can continue to do so. Melissa is still young, she might accept a new mother. I understand. I'll support your decision. So, what's she like, the woman you're seeing? Relieved, Nicholas smiled for the first time. She's a junior at my company. She's been into me since she joined. She's really cheerful, I think Melissa will like her. That's good to hear. Actually, I'd like you to meet her before the wedding, if that's okay. Of course. So the conversation progressed, and a few days later, I was set to meet Nicholas's fiancée. Her name is Annabelle, and just like Nicholas said, she was very cheerful. Throughout our conversation, her constant smile made me genuinely like her. When I first saw him at the company, I knew I liked him. I heard he lost his previous wife, but I didn't care and went for it. I aggressively pursued him. Anyway, she talked a lot. With her youthful appearance, she looked much younger than her age. I was worried about how Melissa would feel about Annabelle, but Melissa seemed to warm up to her quickly. Seeing Melissa so attached to Annabelle, I felt reassured that she would be all right. Annabelle, please take good care of them. I'm here to help if you need anything. I bowed as politely as I could, and Annabelle gave a thumbs up. Okay. Leave it to me. Afterward, Nicholas and Annabelle got married and started their new life. I wholeheartedly blessed their future and returned to my regular life. Working at the cafe, joking with the regulars, and knitting while watching TV at home. It was fulfilling, but I felt a bit lonely compared to the busyness of the past. At such times, I prayed in my heart to Stephanie. What would she say if she were alive? I thought about such things as I continued with my knitting. Several more years passed since their remarriage. One day, I went to give Melissa a sweater I had knitted, heading to the condominium where Nicholas and his family lived. Nicholas seemed busy with work lately, often away on business trips. With him not home often, I worried Annabelle might be overburdened with childcare. While delivering the sweater, I hoped to help Annabelle as well. Thinking about what to talk about with her, I headed to Nicholas's condominium. What floor was it again? Arriving at the condominium, I muttered to myself, standing in front of the elevator. Luckily, the elevator was just coming down. Third floor, second floor, as the lights blinked, and a sound indicated its arrival at the first floor. In contrast to the slowly opening doors, a woman hurried out. I glanced at her and was surprised to see that the woman was Annabelle. Oh! Annabelle! Startled by my voice, Annabelle let out a gasp and hopped a little. Laura? You startled me! What are you doing here? Sorry about that. I knitted a sweater for Melissa and thought I'd bring it over. Hearing this, Annabelle suddenly seemed unsettled. Her gaze wandered around, restlessly. I noticed that Annabelle was dressed very elegantly. Her outfit and makeup were perfect. Are you heading out? Bad timing on my part. Yes, I have a meeting with mom friends. So, Avoiding eye contact and fidgeting with the hand not holding her bag, Annabelle spoke. Annabelle seemed in a hurry. Regretting not contacting her in advance, I suggested. Don't worry about me, go ahead. Melissa is in her room, right? If I stay with her, you can relax and enjoy your time more. And so, I offered. Just wait a moment. I can't impose that on you, Laura. Don't worry about it. You probably need a break too. I'm just an old lady with too much time on her hands. However, she stubbornly refused my offer, and I felt something was off. Sure, I might have been overstepping. But was there a need for her to be so frantic? The truth is, my apartment's a mess. I'm embarrassed for you to see it. That's why I don't want you to come in. It's fine, really. I can help clean up. Finally, unable to hold back any longer, Annabelle snatched the bag with the sweater from my hand. I really can't have you here. I'll make sure Melissa gets the sweater. Please go home now. I'll contact you later. Then she pressed the elevator button. Even as Annabelle stepped in and the doors began to close, she kept a wary eye on me, making sure I wasn't following. As the doors closed slowly, I waved goodbye. Only silence remained. But my mind was anything but quiet. The season was about to turn to autumn, yet her attire was quite revealing. I also noticed a strong scent of perfume. I've met with mom friends myself, but never dressed so provocatively. Maybe times have changed, but Annabelle's attire seemed too intent on attracting the opposite sex. Moreover, the once bright smiling Annabelle didn't smile at all. Instead, she had a glaring look that concerned me. I wanted to chase after her, go to the apartment, and clear my doubts. But Melissa was there too. Not wanting to cause a commotion, I decided not to. I watched the elevator light ascend with a feeling of unease. With worries in my heart, I left the condominium quickly. That night, while knitting and watching TV, I suddenly got a call from Annabelle. I stopped my work and answered the phone. Hello. Hello. Granny. Melissa's innocent voice came through. Her voice instantly made me smile. Melissa. It's been a while. Have you been well? Yeah. And thanks for the sweater. I'll treasure it. Her words brought relief. Annabelle had indeed given it to her. That's all right, dear. If you ever need another, I'm always here to knit one for you. Really? That's so nice. Granny, you're like Santa Claus too. The phrase Granny, you're like Santa Claus too oddly struck me. As if there was someone else giving gifts besides me. Yes, indeed. You're such a good girl, Santa Claus must visit you a lot. I subtly tried to confirm the meaning of her words. Melissa. Don't say unnecessary things. I faintly heard Annabelle's angry voice from the background. Unaware that I could hear her, Annabelle continued scolding in a stern tone. You've already said thank you, right? Hang up now. Yes, okay. Sorry, Granny. I have to go now. Melissa's voice was trembling. More than being upset about being scolded, she seemed frightened by Annabelle's voice. Understood. Call me again later. With that, I ended the call and picked up my crochet hook again. The interaction between the two felt oddly strained for a mother and child. Due to a vague unease, I found it hard to continue knitting. Annabelle's flashy attire from the afternoon and Melissa's fearful voice from earlier. Could something troubling be happening? I knew I had to do something, but wasn't sure what. I sat motionless for a while, pondering my next move. That's it. Nicholas. I should talk to Nicholas. With his image in mind, I immediately grabbed my mobile phone and called Nicholas. He was on a business trip out of state, but it should be after work hours. Please, pick up. Luckily, Nicholas answered the phone right away. Hello. What's up, Mom? It's unusual for you to call at this time. I could hear a hint of tiredness in his voice. But I had no time to worry about that. Hello, Nicholas. Are you okay? I need to talk to you about something. I'm fine, but what's wrong? Did something happen? Sensing urgency in my voice, Nicholas's tone became serious. I told him about visiting the condominium with the sweater, encountering Annabelle in the elevator hall, and then about Melissa earlier. Nicholas listened quietly as I spoke. After I finished, he replied, I understand the situation. Indeed, it does sound concerning. He let out a deep sigh. That's what I thought. I can't stop thinking about it. While I was frantic, Nicholas seemed surprisingly calm. What should we do? What if something happens to Melissa? Just wait a moment, Mom. Panicking won't help. I think Annabelle is just stressed because I've been busy. We shouldn't make a fuss about it. Calmed by Nicholas's advice, I regained some composure. You're right. I'm sorry for jumping the gun. That's okay. But we can't just leave it at that. I'll talk to my company and try to cut my business trip short. We can go to the house together when I'm back. Indeed, it's better to act together rather than rushing in alone. I agreed with Nicholas's suggestion. Understood. Let me know when you've decided on a plan. Yeah. But keep this a secret from Annabelle, okay? Talk to you later. After hanging up, I let out a deep sigh. Nothing was resolved yet, and the unease hadn't disappeared. But hearing Nicholas's calm voice had indeed eased my mind a bit. Nicholas has really grown up. I need to stay strong too. Reminding myself of this, I waited for Nicholas's call with a shifted mindset. Soon after, Nicholas contacted me saying he could return earlier than planned. We arranged to visit the condominium together and hoped for the day to come quickly. All I could do was pray for Melissa's safety. Stephanie, please protect that child. I beg of you. I continued to plead in my heart. Finally, the day arrived. Leaving my house earlier than planned, Nicholas was not yet there. After informing him I'd enter first, I took the elevator to the apartment. Reaching the door, my heart raced. I mentally rehearsed what to say to Annabelle and braced myself before ringing the doorbell. I rang once, twice, but there was no response from inside. Unable to wait, I knocked on the door. Laura here. Annabelle. Melissa. If you're there, please answer. I banged on the door loudly, but there was no response at all. Just as I was about to leave, thinking they might have gone out, I heard the sound of a key turning. When the door opened, there stood Melissa. She looked anxious, but her face lit up when she saw me. Granny! She exclaimed briefly and hugged me tightly. I picked up Melissa and went inside. The room was eerily quiet, and Annabelle was nowhere to be seen. Melissa, did Annabelle go out somewhere? Melissa just nodded in response to my question. As we moved further into the house and reached the living room, I noticed half-eaten snacks on the table. I put Melissa down and asked her again. It's lunchtime, but you were eating snacks? Yeah. When Dad's not here, Santa Claus comes and brings me snacks. I decided to ask Melissa about the doubt that had been on my mind since the other day. Melissa, who is this Santa Claus? While eating the snacks, Melissa shook her head. I don't know. He comes on days when Dad's not here and brings lots of stuff. Mom looks so happy about it. What does Mom say about him? Does she mention Santa Claus's name? Melissa tilted her head in confusion. I don't know. She always leaves with Santa Claus quickly. Only Mom comes back. So, Santa Claus visits often because you're a good girl. But Dad doesn't know, right? Yeah. Dad's never met Santa Claus. Mom says not to tell Dad because it would upset Santa Claus. Hearing this, I was convinced that Annabelle was entertaining an unknown man while Nicholas was away. Presumably, that's what she planned when I tried to deliver the sweater. That would explain Annabelle's behavior at that time. And Melissa, receiving sweets and toys, really is believing in Santa Claus. A cheap way to keep her quiet. That's when I noticed Melissa's clothes were dirty. Melissa, stay here for a moment. I had a bad feeling. Looking around the house, my fears were confirmed. Dirty clothes scattered everywhere, unwashed dishes piled up in the kitchen. Carefully avoiding the mess, I opened the fridge. It was nearly empty, with only expired food inside. Shocked by the state of things, I returned to the living room. Melissa was gobbling up the sweets. Melissa, are you hungry? Haven't you eaten? I'm hungry because I haven't ate. That's why I like eating the sweets Santa Claus gives me. I hugged Melissa tightly, gently stroking her head. It's too much for such a young child to endure. How could I face Stephanie in heaven now? As I loosened my embrace, Nicholas arrived. Entering the room and setting down his bag, he sighed as he looked around. This is a mess. Dad! Welcome back! Melissa quickly left my side and hugged Nicholas. Melissa, have you been a good girl? Nicholas embraced her, gently stroking her head as I had. Nicholas, can you watch Melissa? She hasn't eaten anything. I'm going to the supermarket to buy some groceries. Understood. I appreciate it. I hurriedly left and bought essential groceries. Back home, I cleaned the kitchen and cooked a meal. Melissa ate hungrily. Meanwhile, Nicholas and I cleaned the room and secured evidence of Annabelle's infidelity. We discussed how to confront Annabelle with the truth. During our talk, Nicholas sensed Annabelle's return and retreated to the back room. I'm home. You better have not done anything. Annabelle entered, noticing me, and dropped her bag. Laura! What are you doing here? She looked around the room and went to the kitchen. And then approached me angrily. Unbelievable. You just come in and use the kitchen? That's outrageous even for you. Annabelle's anger didn't seem to subside. And then she directed her anger at Melissa. Melissa! You opened the door for her. Why do you always do such unnecessary things? Melissa dropped her chopsticks to the floor and clung to Annabelle's legs, crying loudly. Mom, I'm sorry. I won't do anything bad again. Please forgive me. Annabelle, there's no need to speak like that. Melissa was waiting here hungry the whole time. Annabelle, her face twisted in anger, let out a heavy sigh. I don't need to be lectured. Melissa is my child. Laura, please don't interfere. I clenched my fists involuntarily. Yes, her words weren't wrong. But I couldn't overlook this situation for Melissa's sake. But this is like neglecting a child. I understand it's tough with Nicholas being busy. If that's the case, you should have asked me for help. Enough! Just leave now. I'll ask Nicholas to have a word with you. There's no need for that. Nicholas, unable to bear Annabelle's harsh words any longer, emerged from his hiding spot. Annabelle was surprised to see him. Nicholas, you're back already. That was quick. Was work all right? Annabelle desperately tried to cover up her actions. But it was too late for such efforts. Still, Annabelle seemed oblivious, continuing to speak sweetly to Nicholas. If you had told me you were coming back early, I would have cleaned up and prepared a feast. But those words no longer had any effect on me or Nicholas. Nicholas signaled me with his eyes. Understanding immediately, I took Melissa's hand. Melissa, you're full now, right? Let's watch TV together. I took Melissa to another room and turned on the TV. Although she was sobbing, she soon became engrossed in the TV. Melissa, watch TV for a bit. I'm going to clean up. Okay. Leaving my smiling granddaughter watching TV, I returned to the living room. Nicholas and Annabelle were seated facing each other at the dining table. Annabelle had changed completely from her earlier coyness, now sitting quietly, looking down. Nicholas sat with his arms crossed, staring intently at Annabelle. I sat down next to Nicholas. Taking that as a cue, Nicholas began to speak. So, can you explain what all this is about? Annabelle bit her lip, not answering. Listen, Annabelle. I'm not trying to blame you. I share the responsibility, too. I was too busy with work to help with childcare. Then Annabelle suddenly looked up and glared at Nicholas. That's right. It's all your fault for dumping everything on me. You're never home, and Melissa is a handful. It was hard. So, you cheated on him. I calmly responded to Annabelle's defiant attitude. In her panic, Annabelle started blurting out things we hadn't even asked. I did love Nicholas, you know. Since I joined the company. I thought Stephanie's death was my chance, so I married him, but now I regret it. She continued, taking advantage of our silence. But look at Nicholas. He's gotten old. Look at that belly. It's embarrassing. I'm disillusioned. I'm still young and I want to have fun. Is that too much to ask? I involuntarily glanced at Nicholas. But he didn't seem particularly angry. I get what you're saying. So, who is your affair partner? a friend from my student days, Hugo. We happened to meet recently. He's still wonderful, unlike you. After saying this, Annabelle looked up at the ceiling. I shouldn't have married. Melissa is becoming more like Stephanie and is not cute at all. But Hugo likes kids, so she was useful in that matter. Suddenly, Nicholas slammed his fist on the table. Both Annabelle and I were startled and tensed up. Nicholas glared at Annabelle with anger-filled eyes. You think because I don't say anything, you can keep this up? I was going to forgive you, but you keep spouting nonsense. Annabelle seemed completely frightened by this side of Nicholas. I swallowed hard, impressed by his intensity. Mock me all you want, but I won't tolerate you talking about Melissa like that. It's over. We're getting a divorce. I'll be seeking alimony, too. Wait. Annabelle's complexion changed the moment she heard divorce. She realized she had said too much. I won't divorce. I'll apologize for overstepping. I regret what I did to Melissa, and I'll break up with Hugo. Please forgive me. No, we're separated. Even if I forgave you now, you'd just do it again. My mind is made up. I had never seen Nicholas with such a cold expression. Annabelle's anger flared up again at his unchanging decision. Stop it. You just admitted it's your fault. I won't allow a divorce. Hearing this, Nicholas slowly took out his mobile phone and placed it on the table. He operated the screen, and Annabelle's voice started playing. As soon as she heard it, she became silent and seemed to come to her senses. Her earlier statements echoed through the room. As you can hear, I recorded your voice. I have evidence of the state of the room and your affair. So, there's no chance of winning for you. Thus, Annabelle finally compromised and accepted the divorce. For the time being, I took custody of Melissa. It was decided because Nicholas was busy, and it was deemed unsafe to leave her with Annabelle. During the divorce mediation, I started taking Melissa to the cafe with permission. The regular customers were smitten with her and even helped look after her. When I explained the situation to them, one of them, a former detective, suggested filing a criminal complaint. With enough evidence, it would be possible, he advised. I immediately informed Nicholas, and we began preparations for a criminal case. Simultaneously, the divorce mediation also progressed smoothly. Thanks to the evidence we had secured in advance, Nicholas successfully gained custody. I am truly glad I consulted with Nicholas at that time. Regarding alimony, since Nicholas also had some fault, the amount wasn't significant. However, Annabelle couldn't afford it, so her parents agreed to pay on her behalf. Subsequently, Annabelle was arrested. Following the trial, she is now incarcerated. Melissa was anxious until the turmoil settled, but she quickly cheered up thanks to the regular customers and our emotional support. On my recommendation, Nicholas moved to a nearby neighborhood. He's still busy with work, so when he's on business trips, Melissa stays at my house. Our greatest joy is doing knitting together and watching TV. Melissa increasingly resembles Stephanie. Seeing Stephanie's reflection in Melissa's smile, we are all living a happy life.
Nancy, is something wrong?
On a cold day when Christmas songs could be heard throughout the city, I stopped to admire a tree ornament. My husband, a few steps ahead, noticed and turned back, tilting his head in curiosity. His ears, reddened by the cold, peeked out from beneath his warm smile. I found his appearance endearingly sweet. No, nothing's wrong. Let's head home and have dinner. It's especially chilly today, so I've prepared a hot, delicious gratin.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
Laughing together, we held hands and began walking back home. Suddenly, a familiar Christmas song began to play somewhere nearby. I'm Nancy. What I'm about to share is a slightly magical Christmas miracle I experienced a few years ago and the story leading up to it.
You're late.
Greeted, not with a welcome but a shout, I stood confused.
Where have you been?
Huh? Just the nearest grocery store. It was mid-December. I had just been yelled at and sent out of the house without even a coat in the biting cold.
What? Are you mocking me? I'm the breadwinner. When I come home from work, I expect a proper meal. Can't you even do that simple thing?
My husband was furiously yelling at the dinner I had prepared.
No nuts? Seriously, how can you look so nonchalant about it? A salad without nuts is unthinkable. Are you kidding me?
He had yelled at me for this, so I grabbed my wallet and ran to the grocery store, hurrying back. But my panting only made him more irate.
What, the grocery store? Are you out of your mind? Which is cheaper, that or the supermarket?
He pointed at the nuts I had just bought, his face a mix of disbelief and annoyance.
Have you lost your sense of money?
I couldn't hold back any longer and retorted, I always shop at the regular supermarket, but it's far and I forgot the nuts this time. You would be angry if the soup got cold, so I went to the nearest grocery store. Sure, I forgot to put nuts on the shopping list, and I personally think a salad without nuts is fine. I don't understand why he has to be so angry. But my husband's anger didn't subside at all.
Are you kidding me? Not even going to apologize?
I did apologize earlier, didn't I?
What's that attitude? You always...
My retort only fueled his anger further, and for nearly an hour he continued to vent his frustrations at me. Finally, he snapped.
How can I eat this cold stuff?
He flipped the salad plate and stormed out to eat elsewhere. A few days later, I was cleaning the yard of my childhood home, which was for sale, and decided to visit the neighborhood grandma. Hey, Grandma, your revelation, it's the first time it didn't come true. I never did any revelation. Grandma, who had adored me since I was little, smiled ambiguously. What? Everything you said since I was a kid came true. If it wasn't revelation, then... a prophecy? I chuckled wryly. Remember when you told me not to go shopping downtown today? Lightning struck the store I was going to and it caught fire. And when I wanted to laze at home and play games the day before a day off, you advised me to go out because it would be sunny. I reluctantly went, and when I returned, there had been a burglar at home. If I had been there, I would have encountered the burglar. Thinking back, it still scares me. The burglar, later caught elsewhere, had a knife. The thought of what could have happened frightens me. Grandma had accurately predicted many things, like a real prophet. Hey, Grandma? Even when I tried to dismiss it as coincidence or imagination, Grandma listened quietly as my voice faltered. Mom was a single mother. Wouldn't have been prepared for her illness if you hadn't predicted it. She said, Grandma made a revelation. Nancy will have something incredibly joyous happen this Christmas. It comforted her, knowing her daughter would have a future filled with smiles. Grandma's revelation in the hospital had been a beacon of hope for Mom, and a testament to her love for me. So when John proposed to me on Christmas, I thought this was the revelation. John, whom I met through an acquaintance, seemed humble and kind, but after marriage, he became domineering and, like the recent nut incident, got angry on trivial things, complaining the meal was too cold or the fruit too warm, despite being the one ignoring the food for his phone. I felt suffocated, constantly criticized for everything I did, be it cooking, cleaning, or laundry. I don't want to go home to him. I murmured, fighting back tears, but then, isn't it getting late? Don't you have dinner to prepare? Grandma looked at the sky, urging me, heavy-hearted, to get going. I felt gently rejected and slowly stood up. It's okay. If you stand firm on your own feet, you will face many hardships. But you'll find happiness. A truly joyous Christmas is coming. Live upright and true. God is watching. I turned quickly at the words whispered to my bowed head. Is that a revelation? Who knows? I'm just Grandma. She dodged the question with an ambiguous smile. Alright, I understand. If I try hard, John will change, right? Maybe it's too early to consider the revelation wrong. I decided to switch gears and keep trying. Yet,
Dinner, bath towel, iron shirt?
my husband's attitude worsened at an accelerating pace. Not even a year into our marriage, he began to command me, as if it were natural, devoid of any kind words, always irritable and domineering.
What's wrong with you?
Oh, what happened? One night again, he was angry.
You don't greet me when I come home tired from work and instead wander around until this hour, and now you want me to microwave the meal? Don't joke with me.
Feeling the pressure, I sighed. I told you, didn't I? I had a neighborhood festival planning meeting today. I even wrote it in a memo.
Shut up. You think that's an excuse to serve me a half-hearted meal?
How half-hearted? It's all homemade. The same number of dishes as usual.
If it's not fresh, it's half-hearted.
His claims were unreasonable.
The most important thing for you should be me, the one providing for you. You're my wife. Obey my orders.
Such a thing? His words left me speechless.
Without parents or relatives, you wouldn't survive if abandoned. A woman like you should just worship me silently. If you resist, it's divorce.
He sneered at me, seemingly revealing his stress by subjugating me.
But the bath towel?
I wanted to scream, I can't stand this anymore. But that would worsen his mood. That night, amidst the snow and rain, with nowhere to go, I reluctantly prepared the bath towel for him. After days like this, I collapsed from severe abdominal pain while shopping at the supermarket and was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. Hearing the doctor's explanation, my vision blurred.
The disease is transmitted to sexual contact. Both you and your husband need treatment. You didn't notice it because there were no symptoms. Given the progression, surgery is necessary, and unfortunately, it's very unlikely that you will be able to have children in the future.
The doctor, compassionate yet direct, left and my husband hurried after him.
Can't have a baby?
Repeating the harsh reality, I felt despair. I need to hear more from the doctor. With unsteady legs, I followed the doctor and my husband. Doctor? John? But what I overheard stopped me cold.
So everyone I've been involved with needs to be tested? Yes. Without simultaneous treatment, the infection will just recur. Will they know what the test is for? Yes.
He was quick to seek treatment for himself, but not a word of concern for me. And my baby? For me, an orphan, a new family was a cherished dream. A husband, children, a happy home filled with laughter. Tears fell heavily onto the smiling photo of my mother. I clutched in my hands. Mom? Unable to hold back, my voice broke through, mingled with tears, as I covered my mouth. Then,
what are you lazing around for? You haven't prepared dinner or a shower. Leaving me, the breadwinner of this family, neglected while you wallow in sadness? Here's your punishment, a divorce application.
My husband stormed in noisily and thrust a divorce application at me, sitting dejectedly.
Annoying? Fine, I can divorce any time. You'll be the one in trouble. If you don't want to be divorced, stop lazing around and get moving.
I am not lazing around.
Oh, there's another punishment. I won't give you this month's living expenses.
He leered at me with a nasty smile, seemingly pleased.
An opportunity for you, who depends on me, to change your attitude. Know your place. If you resist, it's divorce.
Having said his piece, he left the room, seemingly refreshed. Divorce, huh? Looking at the form with my husband's name on it, I felt a sense of calm. Mom, I have decided. I wiped the water droplets from the photo frame and spoke to my smiling mother. Watch over me. For a while, I continued living in silence with my husband. He treated me like a servant, erupting in anger depending on his mood, while I spent my days quietly but firmly resisting. Then,
That's what I'm saying. Lukewarm fruit is inedible and cold soup is out of the question. When will you ever get it right?
It started again. Internally sighing, I decided to put my long-considered plan into action. Divorce if I resist, right?
That's all you remembered? Reflect on your foolishness if you don't want to be divorced by me.
He laughed through his nose, acting superior. You're not very bright, are you?
Huh?
My response seemed to confuse him.
What did you just say?
Facing my bewildered husband, I confronted him. The same thing over and over. Ever heard of vocabulary? All you have is divorce, divorce. Is that the only word in your limited vocabulary?
You?
Fine, let's divorce. I'll grant your wish and become a stranger to you.
Huh?
Caught off guard, he forgot to get angry. I smiled and said my goodbyes. I have already moved out my important things. Feel free to throw away what's left. Goodbye. I took off the apron I bought when we got married, folded it neatly, placed it before him with the house keys on top, and left with my suitcase.
What the hell?
I heard my now bewildered husband, but I didn't care. Now, that's refreshing. I walked lightly back to my childhood home, ignoring his bothersome voice. A month later, the divorce finalized, but my ex-husband's messages kept coming.
Reflect, idiot. I'll forgive you if you apologize. As a wife,
I ignored the barrage of messages I had never experienced during our marriage, silencing the notification. But his persistence led me to meet him one last time at his parents' house.
Why are you ignoring me?
Perhaps avoiding harsh words due to his parents' presence, my ex-husband spoke with a facade of civility.
You never replied to my messages.
Oh, those? Turned off the notifications.
Huh?
Too persistent.
I am persistent?
Yes. So, what do you want with a stranger?
You...
As I replied nonchalantly, his face gradually reddened with anger.
What's that attitude? My parents are here. What do you mean by... sorry.
Finally, he raised his voice, but noticing his parents' disapproving looks, he apologized for the first time in our marriage. I managed to suppress my urge to mock him as he apologized. Wow, you can apologize? That's amazing. Continuing the conversation, I asked, so what do you want with your ex-wife after the divorce? Despite the presence of his parents, my ex-husband seemed puzzled by my relaxed demeanor, but got to the point.
Hold on, aren't you suffering after divorcing me? How are you managing to live now?
He feigned concern despite never once visiting my family home.
I'm saying if you want, we can reconcile. You must be happy, right?
As if? What's he thinking? I nearly burst out laughing. I am neither happy nor struggling. I earn enough for myself, plus the living allowance you give was just $250 a month, remember? It was never enough to sustain life. Actually, I think you're the one struggling without someone to do the housework. I have been much more comfortable since I became single. Reconciling makes no sense to me. My response visibly rattled him.
Huh? But you were supposed to be a housewife. I mean, discussing such precise amounts isn't appropriate here, right?
My ex-husband stammered, constantly glancing at his parents. John, you're not a little boy caught doing mischief. Calm down. And no use pretending. I know all your secrets.
What?
I silenced him by revealing my secrets. You're mistaken. I was never just a housewife, remember? I told you about living abroad as a child due to Dad's job. I used my Spanish skills from that time to work as a translator from home. There were plenty of resources on the bookshelf.
Huh? But those foreign language books?
They were original manuscripts and resources for translation. You never touched them because you couldn't read them. Thankfully, you never found the recording equipment either.
Huh?
He gasped at the mention of recording. His father, who had discovered the truth, presented the physical evidence. See, they already know how you treated me. Your parents apologized, crying. They said they were sorry for raising a son who could do such terrible things. As he tried to escape the awkwardness, his mother made him sit back down. I then pulled out a document I had prepared. This is the copy of the divorce application I filed. I made sure the part with a sticky note was visible to my ex-husband.
What?
You know about this, right?
No way!
His trembling was understandable. I was pointing to the witness section where a name well known to my ex-husband was written. There weren't enough spaces in the form, were there? After all, you had more than 2 affairs, right?
Wait a minute.
No way I'm waiting. Before I could strike the final blow, a resentful voice spoke up. John, you hid the disease from us, didn't you? And all of us were only involved with you, which means you brought it from somewhere else, right?
Oh no.
And what do you mean I was just an affair? You said we would get married someday. That's something only a single man should say.
Oh.
We saw how you treated your wife, not just us. You're a woman's enemy. Humanity's enemy, the worst kind of person.
Oh.
Surrounded by the woman he had affairs with, my ex-husband was paralyzed with shock. His parents sighed deeply at their son's actions. Yes, I had secretly contacted my ex-husband's mistresses, whom I discovered through a private investigator. I spilled everything to his parents, and that led to this moment. Just give up.
Oh my God.
Following a strong request from his parents saying their son needed to reflect, the mistresses and I demanded compensation from him. Moreover, his employer, a friend of my ex-mother-in-law, arranged for the payments to be deducted from his salary, ensuring he couldn't escape. Forcibly returned to his parents' home, my ex-husband, under their strict supervision, would be burdened with paying compensation for a long time. 6 years later.
Nancy, is something wrong?
It was a cold day with Christmas songs playing all around town. When I stopped to admire a tree decoration, my husband, who had walked ahead, turned back and tilted his head, his ears red from the cold. Our young daughter, held in his arm, also had rosy cheeks. Oh, how adorable, I thought, cherishing them deeply. Grandma's revelation was really something, I murmured softly. My current husband is actually the brother of one of my ex-husband's mistresses. We got along strangely well with those women and kept in touch. He was the one who comforted me when I was down. It's a truly bizarre story. If I hadn't married my ex-husband, I probably would never have met my current husband. It seems that hardships do lead to happiness, just as Grandma's revelation said. Moreover, after getting together with him, we even had a baby, despite being told it was highly unlikely. I remember being informed of my pregnancy at the emergency hospital one Christmas when I felt ill. My husband and I jumped for joy. And the nurse, although pleased, chided us to keep calm because of my condition. It's a real Christmas miracle. I think about this deeply every season. Despite being hurt a lot because of my ex-husband, now I am this happy. Mom! Pulled from my thoughts by my daughter, who left my husband's arms to cling to me, I returned to the present. It's nothing. Let's head home and have dinner. It's particularly cold, so I've prepared a delicious hot gratin.
Oh, can't wait.
Yay! Laughing together, the three of us held hands and walked back home. Somewhere nearby, a familiar Christmas song started playing again. I'm a daughter raised by a single father. As your future mother-in-law, I assure everyone that I will properly discipline her from now on. Please be at ease. Who on earth is telling us to be at ease? The big moment of my life, every woman's dream? During the wedding, a major event, the crazy mother-in-law Mary suddenly grabs the microphone looking self-satisfied. Both the guests and I are appalled. Your beloved son sitting next to me is so embarrassed, he's about to cry. Mary, what are you thinking? Are you out of your mind? My name is Amy, a 32-year-old office worker. I met Potter, who's 2 years younger, on a dating app. After dating for 2 years, we decided to get married. We first went to my dad, who cried tears of joy. I naively thought Potter's parents would react the same, but that expectation was quickly dashed. No way, I don't approve. Someone you met through such an obscure method and moreover from a single parent? I won't accept it. I was taken aback by the uniquely outrageous Mary. Contrary to her father-in-law, Thomas said,
Hey, that's rude. Sorry, Amy. I still can't let go of my child. Please, take good care of Potter.
I had heard Mary was a bit overprotective, but this was beyond my expectations. She's like a monster. Potter is an only child, and Mary and Thomas married late. Mary was 42 when Potter was born. Nowadays, meeting through a dating app is not unusual, but it seems they have a strong impression that no good people come from online meetings. Furthermore, they seem to really dislike the fact that I was raised by a single parent. Children of divorced parents have higher divorce rates. I don't want Potter to go through that sadness. What an absurd claim. I thought, where did she get that information? But it was clear Mary cared deeply for Potter. As she continued her high-handed attitude, I couldn't help but give a wry smile.
Enough already. You don't know anything about Amy. Her mom didn't divorce. She passed away in an accident.
Reacting to Peter's words, Mary said, Oh, is that so? But still, she seemed about to complain when Thomas finally lost his temper.
Potter is already 30 years old. Isn't it time you let go?
Mary didn't seem fully convinced, but somehow we managed to get their blessings for our marriage. That's when my days of hell began. After the family meeting, I moved in with Potter. Mary's demeaning attitude was overwhelming even during that meeting. My parents, unlike Mary and Thomas, married early. I was born when Dad was just 20. Mary seemed bothered by this too. Leonard, having Amy at 20, you must have been quite the character in your youth, she said. Thomas, exasperated by her words, said,
What an impolite thing to say. Leonard, I apologize for Mary. We are relieved and happy that someone as responsible and lovely as Amy has chosen Potter.
And he said something that made me happy. Mary may have thrown rude words, but Dad had been earnestly working hard since graduating high school, even after Mom passed away.
I'll never love anyone more than Effie,
he would always say, continually cherishing Mom. I felt nothing but disgust for Mary, who judged Dad solely based on his age and appearance. Dad just laughed it off, but he reached out after the meeting.
Mary is quite unique, but are you okay, Amy?
He worried. I had some concerns, but I wasn't living with Mary, so I thought I could manage. The first morning living together arrived. My phone rang at 4 a.m. What? An alarm? A call? Yes? I answered grudgingly. What's with that pitiful voice? Isn't it time for morning chores? Mary? I was wide awake from the shock. Morning chores? Does Potter always wake up this early? Annoyed by my questions, she snapped. Not his, yours. Confused by her response, I stayed silent as Mary began spouting nonsense. Apparently, a wife must wake up earlier than her husband, clean the house, prepare a warm meal, get dressed, and wake him up. That was the morning rule. Losing my mom at a young age, I momentarily wondered, really? But I quickly came to my senses. Anyway, if you want to marry Potter, this is just basic, understand? Snorting in excitement, Mary said, what era are you living in? I can't do all that every morning. I have work too. Potter said he's fine with a light breakfast, and I'll try to do the cleaning on my days off without overexerting myself. I apologized briefly and went back to sleep. I felt a bit rude, but Mary calling early in the morning with her bizarre rules was pretty rude too, so I figured we were even as I drifted back to sleep. Unsurprisingly, I overslept because of the weird wake-up call.
That's what I've been saying. I'm fine. Just stop it already.
Potter seemed quite angry on the phone. Apparently, Mary, unable to bear that I didn't answer her call, phoned Potter and ended up getting scolded by him. Potter apologized to me profusely. Potter is on my side. Everything will be okay. That alone reassured me. After that day, I didn't hear from Mary again. I heard later that Potter had talked to Thomas, and Mary got a serious talking to. Though I thought Mary was odd, I was too busy to deal with her. The reason was the wedding preparations. Wedding ceremonies are fun to watch, but being on the organizing side was overwhelming with so many decisions to make. I wanted to decide everything with Potter, but then he said,
I'm fine with anything. The bride is the star of the wedding, right? I'm just a supporting role, so I want the wedding to be how Amy wishes.
He said it like he had made a great point, which made me furious. Huh? A supporting role? What do you mean? Is it my wedding alone? My frustration exploded and I burst into tears. Seeing me cry, Potter looked panicked. No, that's not what I meant. I'll work hard on the wedding preparations too. Let's make it a wonderful ceremony. And he said after that, Potter made sure to attend every wedding meeting with me on his days off. Though we had been drifting apart recently, we started laughing together again like before. Then came the day I was most looking forward to, choosing the wedding attire. I still haven't forgiven what happened that day. I was shocked when I arrived, because Thomas and Mary, whom I hadn't seen in a while, were there. It's been a long time. Why are you here today? Unable to hide my confusion, my smile turned strained. Why? When I talked to Peter yesterday, he said it was the dress selection day today. I came to see Potter looking handsome, Mary said in her usual domineering manner. I felt slightly dizzy at her words, and there was Potter, not looking the least bit sorry. Needless to say, the rest of the dress selection was not fun at all for me. Inside the dressing room, Mary was being overly enthusiastic. This one is nice too. Potter looks good in everything. Let's try that one next. Even the planner, Eleanor, seemed strained by the unexpected participation of Thomas and Mary. I have never seen a mom so involved in her son's outfit selection. Quite a mother-in-law you have there. Are you okay? She whispered to me, leaving me feeling embarrassed. Nevertheless, I refocused and chose a dress. Among the many options, I picked my dream mermaid-style dress. I had always admired its beautiful line since attending a friend's wedding. I had been dieting and even gave up my favorite chocolate attending the gym and spa just to fit into this dress. Trying it on, Eleanor commented, "Wow, you look beautiful. It suits you so well." Her words filled me with joy for all my hard work. Thomas nearby added, "Amy's tall and slender figure makes the dress look even more stunning." Hearing this, Mary approached and said, "Oh no, what a vulgar dress. It's showing off your body too much. Are you trying to attract men's attention or what?" Her command was incredibly rude. "Not at all. This is a popular dress and suits her very well." Eleanor quickly intervened, but Mary was not listening. "At our wedding, my brothers will be there too. Do you want to make a fool of me with such an indecent daughter-in-law? That's why I didn't want this marriage in the first place." After all the days off I took for the appointments, after all the dieting, my dream dress was being called vulgar? Am I really becoming part of this family? This is impossible, right? My pent-up anger exploded. Enough. Why does our wedding have to be according to your wishes? What do you want me to wear? Something like your Robert-like outfit and huge shoulder pads? Mary's face turned red at my words. Eventually, Potter and Thomas intervened in our argument. "You're unbelievable. Apologize to Amy. She looks great. Your commands are what's questionable." Thomas scolded. He apologized to me and then dragged Mary away. Despite that was also Amy's fault, right? I agree with Mom this time. I also have doubts about that dress. Choose something more modest. Potter said. I was deeply hurt by his words. I had always told Potter I wanted to wear a mermaid dress and he had agreed, but now, doubting whether I should continue with the marriage, I decided, I'm going back to my parents' house for a while. I'm not sure if we should get married like this. Potter was silent for a moment before saying, "My feelings haven't changed." Despite his words, I went back home. "Dad, I'm sorry. The wedding might be off. To this, Dad simply replied, "I see," and asked no further questions. I felt deeply sorry that Dad had been looking forward to seeing me as a bride. Alone with my thoughts, I began to reminisce about the fun times Potter and I had shared over the past 2 years. We had met on a dating app, introduced by a friend, and at one point I even believed it was destiny. Our family-only wedding was next month, invitations already sent, and my cousins had expressed their excitement. Eleanor had been a great help, and the thought of it all being for nothing just made me sigh. A few days later, after work, Potter asked me to meet him at a cafe. To my surprise, Thomas and Mary were there, and urged by Thomas, Mary apologized to me. "I was wrong last time. Thomas scolded me. I let my anger get the best of me." Mary seemed genuinely downcast.
"I have had time to think alone, and I still want to marry Amy. I'll make her happy."
I watched the in-laws apologizing before responding. "Understood," I answered with just that. I wanted to stay at my parents' home until the wedding, a wish Potter readily accepted. On the wedding day, a day I will never forget, Mary was in high spirits in the dressing room. "What a lovely dress. It's more elegant than the previous one. I was right in my choice," she remarked. I had given up on the mermaid dress for one chosen by Mary. Not at all to my taste. Eleanor repeatedly asked, "The previous dress suited you so well? Are you sure about this one?" And she repeatedly spoke to me. Honestly, I didn't care anymore about the wedding. The family-only wedding proceeded smoothly until near the end when Mary stood up and grabbed a microphone. "Thank you all for being here for Potter's sake," she began, to Potter sitting next to me. "What? I haven't heard anything about this." As I tilted my head, Potter seemed to be in the same boat, shaking his head. Mary continued, "Amy, being raised by a single father, will be disciplined by me, her mother-in-law, to learn the wife's rules. Rest assured, everyone." "What did she just say?" Mary looked pleased with herself, while Potter seemed embarrassed to tears. The audience was silent, perhaps thinking Mary was joking. "A wife wakes up earlier than her husband to clean the house, prepare breakfast, and must always be well-groomed. At night she cleans again and goes to bed after her husband." She proudly recounted the same things she had told me on the phone before. The guests showed visible disgust, and even Potter's relatives had strange expression. "This is absurd." I watched Mary's one-woman show, wondering if this was her idea of revenge. It was utterly pointless. At this moment, Thomas, sitting next to Mary, interjected, "Is that all you wanted to say?" "What?" Mary seemed surprised that Thomas joined the conversation. "I'm speaking now, be quiet," she snapped.
"No, I have had enough. Do you even have the right to lecture others? You used to be diligent with chores when Potter was home. But what about now?"
Thomas revealed that since Potter left, Mary had been neglecting household chores, and he was doing most of them now. I couldn't believe how audaciously Mary had behaved towards guests. Thomas's revelation prompted laughter from some guests. Then Dad stood up.
"Is my daughter Amy being sent to prison or something? She can't live in such a house. Don't insult my precious daughter."
Dad's words brought tears of happiness to my eyes. There were quiet claps around the room. Mary, with her face red and receiving cold stares, looked around in dismay.
"Amy, say something. Amy, isn't this situation awkward enough?"
Despite his mom creating the situation, Potter pathetically relied on me, so I stood up with the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm canceling the wedding here and now. We will return your gifts immediately." The room buzzed with murmurs, some clapping. Potter looked shocked. Mary, too, was surprised by my decision. "As you can see, I'm not liked by Mary. The dress I'm wearing was chosen by her. The dress I really wanted to wear was deemed vulgar and indecent by her, and I can't follow her nonsensical rules, so I'm calling off this marriage." This declaration was met with applause from my relatives. "Hey, what are you deciding on your own? I'm allowing this marriage. A son's wife should just listen to her mother-in-law." Thomas scolded her. "Shut up now." Amidst the chaos, a relative from Potter's side spoke up. "You, be quiet. Weren't you the one who was tormented by your mother-in-law in your first marriage and cried back to your parents' house? How can you do the same?" Apparently, Mary had been divorced once. and suffered greatly at the hands of her mother-in-law in her first marriage. Despite such an experience, what a dreadful person. Mary fell silent at this revelation.
Huh? You're really canceling the wedding? I'll sue you for breaking up the engagement.
Potter glared at me fiercely from beside me. But I wasn't scared at all. Huh? You dare say that while I was at my parents' house, you already engaged, brought a woman you met on a dating app to our home. I can't marry someone as despicable as you. Potter's face paled.
Well,
he stammered. Everyone, Potter just said he would sue me for breaking off our engagement despite him cheating during our engagement. I know everything, so go ahead and sue. How dare you say such a thing? Screw you. My revelation caused an uproar at the wedding venue with condemnation pouring in towards Potter. During my time at my parents' house, my friend Nettie contacted me. Is this your fiancé, Amy? The photo was unmistakably Potter, and it was from a dating app, where he appeared to be seeking a new relationship. I had deleted the app soon after meeting Potter, but he apparently hadn't. Perhaps he had been deceiving me all along. I hired a private investigator who found that Potter was bringing women to our home while I was away. They were nice, he claimed to be working late, but now I wondered... What a mockery. I went through with the wedding only because of a call from Eleanor. Potter's mom contacted me, wanting to read a letter at the wedding in secret. I immediately sensed that spiteful Mary was plotting something. No wonder she was in such a good mood. I simply used her scheme against her and returned it doubled. However, I felt sorry for the guests. I thought I might have gone too far, but seeing their faces of despair was satisfying. It was really good that we hadn't married yet. The guests were outraged, calling Potter the worst and unbelievable. My relatives, you better off not being part of that family, they said. Potter's relatives were in turmoil, thinking it served them right. Then Mary's brother John approached me. I braced for a scolding, but instead,
I'm truly sorry for my foolish family. We will take responsibility.
He apologized. Afterwards, Potter and Mary received a scolding from Thomas and other relatives. Potter paid for the entire cost of the wedding. Even though it was a small ceremony, the amount was significant. Despite being engaged, I demanded compensation from Potter for his infidelity. He audaciously protested this, but after being reprimanded by Thomas and other relatives, he reluctantly ended up paying. While Potter and Mary were the worst, the rest of their family were good people, and I was grateful. Potter had to beg his parents for money as his savings weren't enough. Thomas, exploding with long-held anger, said, I don't care, sort it out yourselves, and left a divorce paper before leaving the house. Thomas later contacted Dad and me to apologize. He is now enjoying peaceful retirement out of state. Potter's situation worsened when one of his flings turned out to be a married woman, creating trouble at his workplace and resulting in his dismissal. He's now struggling to find work and depends on Mary's pension for a modest living. It's nothing but poetic justice. He reaped what he sowed. Years later, a friend introduced me to someone and I remarried. I finally wore my dream mermaid dress at my second wedding. When moving out of state for my husband's job made me sad, Dad said,
Amy, make sure you're happy this time.
I assured him with a smile, of course.
Where's the money I've been sending you every month? David and Sarah look emaciated. James, my husband, who had just returned from an overseas assignment, yelled at me as soon as he got home. What do you mean? I was shocked and stared at James, not understanding what he was talking about. I've been saving the money. Why are David and Sarah emaciated? Don't play dumb. You borrowed money from David, right? He contacted me saying they can't afford proper meals. The photos he sent showed both of them terribly thin. What are you talking about? I hadn't borrowed any money from David. They were fine just a few months ago. It's unlikely for them to become so thin so suddenly. James completely believed David's words and treated me as the bad person. I couldn't let myself or James be manipulated by David any longer. That's the only thing I couldn't tolerate. I had to expose David and Sarah's wrongdoing. I'm Amanda, 61 years old. I work part-time at a local bakery. I've been living alone for the last few years. James, my husband, was assigned overseas. He's now over 60 and works for a construction company, still working hard as a site supervisor. For the past few years, he's been guiding and assisting locals in developing countries and building large commercial facilities. Although I was worried about his first overseas assignment, he seems to enjoy it, getting along well with the cheerful locals. James sends me $2,000 every month for living expenses, so I've been living comfortably on my own. We have a son, David, who also works for a construction company like James. He married Sarah 3 years ago and lives in an apartment nearby. Neighbors say it's nice to have a son close by, but that's not really the case. Since getting married, he hardly ever visits. David left home during his rebellious years, and we haven't been in much contact since. I hoped things would change once he got married and moved nearby, but they didn't. However, it's common to hear that boys don't keep in touch much, so I resigned myself to it. Then one day, David and Sarah suddenly came to my house.
We have a favor to ask.
What's going on?
Well, we need to borrow some money.
Money? Why? I raised my voice, fearing the worst, like debt. David and Sarah looked apologetic and shrugged.
We're thinking of starting infertility treatments.
Infertility treatments?
Yeah, it's been 3 years since we got married and we haven't had a child yet. We thought it's time to consider it.
That's true. But Sarah, you're still in your 20s. Isn't it too early to worry? Sarah responded anxiously.
It's physically challenging if it's too late, and just because we start treatments doesn't mean we'll have a child right away.
That's a good point. I've heard it can take years. I had no idea they were seriously struggling with this.
The thing is, infertility treatments are quite expensive. Sarah works at a grocery store, but honestly, it's tough.
I had heard about infertility treatments on TV. It's a difficult journey that requires a lot of time and money, as I heard from those who've been through it. I wanted to see my grandchild and help my son David if he was in trouble. So I nodded in agreement to David and Sarah's request. I understand. I'll support you both as much as I can. But how much do you need?
Actually, we need about $2,500 a month.
$2,500 a month? It was not a small amount for me. It was more than what James sends me every month. However, with my savings and part-time job, it wasn't an impossible amount.
We'll definitely pay you back, please.
I've always had a soft spot for David's requests. David was finally reaching out to me. Being there for him is what a parent does. All right, I'll deposit it into your bank account each month, okay, David?
That would help a lot. Thanks, Mom.
Thank you, Amanda.
David and Sarah left looking happy. Upon reflection, I had one question. Was $2,500 a month really necessary for infertility treatments? Yet, considering additional expenses like diet and medical visits, I thought it might be necessary. 6 months later, the monthly payment of $2,500 to David were not easy. While I could manage with James's remittances and my part-time income, I had to be more frugal than before. So I went shopping at a discount grocery store a bit far from home. On my way back, passing a casino, I spotted 2 familiar faces. David and Sarah? David and Sarah were entering that casino. Could it be a mistake? Curious, I decided to follow them. I went inside and looked for them. The place was crowded, and just as I was about to give up, I spotted David exiting the restroom. I followed them from a distance unnoticed. David and Sarah were excitedly discussing something. They sat at a table and started playing. There was David, a side I had never seen before. The game ended quick. David and Sarah seemed upset, probably having lost. I doubted whether they were really undergoing infertility treatments. They should be using their money for treatment, not gambling.
They should have managed their finances before borrowing from me. Wanting to confront them, I approached as they left the casino. David, Sarah, can we talk for a moment? What, Mom? They turned around, surprised, their faces strained. What's this? You have money to gamble? Well, we just came to relax a bit. Relax? You seemed quite experienced, though. Oh, I used to come here with friends during college. College, huh? The more I heard, the more suspicious it seemed. So you don't usually gamble? No, we're just stressed, thinking about infertility treatments. That must be tough. But you seem quite knowledgeable. Is it really your first time since college? David began to fidget irritably under my questioning. Are you doubting me? It's not that, but it's shocking to see you coming out of a casino when you said you couldn't afford treatments. I haven't heard much about the treatment either. Oh, you're so annoying. David scratched his head and sighed exaggeratedly. Shut up, all that infertility treatment talk was a lie. So, all the money so far went to gambling? Obviously. If we hit it big, we'll be billionaires. It's stupid not to try such a dream. David and Sarah showed no remorse for deceiving me, laughing mockingly. I felt betrayed after worrying so much for David. I was ready to do anything for him, but he exploited my feelings. Well, then, you won't be needing any more money from me. What are you talking about? If you're not undergoing treatments, you don't need it, right? Well, don't expect a penny from us when we become billionaires. David crossed his arms and looked down on me. Sarah continued with a smug smile.
By the way, we've already spent all the money you gave us, so there's none left. We can't pay it back.
Too bad for you. David and Sarah said mockingly, then turned their backs and left without another word. I was speechless with astonishment. Despite having transferred about $10,000 to them over the past few months, this was their attitude. If I let them continue their reckless behavior, it would lead to irreparable consequences. That's why I decided to stop sending money to David. 2 months later, James was returning home temporarily. I prepared his favorite soup and pasta, waiting for him. As soon as he arrived, James burst out. Where's the money I've been sending you every month? David and Sarah look malnutritioned. What do you mean? I was stunned and stared at James, not understanding what he was talking about. I've been saving the money. Why are David and Sarah malnutritioned? Don't play dumb. You borrowed money from David, right? He contacted me, saying they can't afford proper meals. The photos he sent showed both of them terribly thin. What are you talking about? I can't believe you. Aren't you ashamed as a parent? I've been sending enough money so you wouldn't have financial troubles, and yet you're borrowing money from our son. What are you doing? James was furious, blaming me for everything. However, I had never borrowed money from David. It was all a lie. I was shocked that James completely believed David's words and didn't trust me. But I couldn't let David and Sarah's lies continue. I decided to reveal everything to James. James, I understand you want to believe in David, but can you look at this? Bank statements, what about them? This is the money you've been sending me every month. What? You have plenty of money. James looked puzzled as he examined the statement. That's right, I'm not struggling for money, and look here. Did you send money to David? Yes, until recently I was sending David $2,500 every month. That much? Were you okay with your living expenses? Relieved that James had calmed down, I continued. I managed with my part-time job and savings. I had saved quite a bit. Looking at the remaining balance, he could see I hadn't wasted money. Then why give David money? He said they wanted to start infertility treatments. Infertility treatments? Yes, they've been married for 3 years without a child, so they asked for money for treatments. That's why I lent money to them. James was surprised, having not heard about the treatments. David and Sarah claimed to my husband that they didn't have enough money to live because of me. So why did you stop the payments? It was all a lie. They weren't going to the clinic. Then where did the money go? This is it. The casino they went to happened to be on TV.
It showed people mingling.
You don't mean they used the money for gambling? They lied to try and get money from me too?
James stared in disbelief at the TV. That's when it happened.
Hey, isn't that David and Sarah?
Oh my gosh, it is. I never thought they would ever go back. David and Sarah appeared on the screen. I thought they would restrain themselves after I stopped the payments, but they couldn't quit gambling.
Unbelievable. The photos they sent me showed them looking so thin. They haven't changed at all.
Nowadays, you can edit photos with apps, you know. James, realizing he had been deceived, hung his head in dismay. Maybe his return home was also for David and Sarah's sake. After a moment of shock, James looked up, determined.
Unacceptable. I need to have a serious talk with them.
Saying that, he headed for the door. Where are you going?
To David's house, of course. I'm going to confront them.
In a rage, James was about to leave for David's house, but I quickly stopped him. It's pointless to go now.
Why?
They're at the casino and won't be back until evening. Plus, if you're going, you need to be prepared. I smiled at James. It was time to prepare something special that I had kept hidden until now. In the evening, when we thought David and Sarah would be home by now, James and I headed to David's house. When James rang the doorbell, David and Sarah appeared, looking flustered.
What? Why's Dad here? Aren't you supposed to be overseas? I heard you two were in trouble, so I came back. You both seem quite well, though.
Contrary to the photos James had shown me, David and Sarah looked perfectly healthy but strained.
Struggling for food and money, right? Are you okay now? Yeah, some colleagues at my work have been helping us out. I see. You've been lending money to Mom, right? How much did you lend her?
Well, that's... Pressed by James, David glanced at me. He scratched his head and said, That's right, Mom owes me over $10,000, and she hasn't paid back a cent. What do you think, Dad? Terrible, right? Facing David's resolve to stick to his lies, I let go of any remaining affection.
That's awful. Do you have any proof?
No proof. I lent it to her because she's family, but she's not paying it back.
David's fake tears were met with Sarah's concurrence.
We're struggling too, so we told her we couldn't lend her more money. She got angry, saying we're family but won't help.
Is that true, Amanda?
I did lend money, but I never borrowed any. Assertively denying their claims, David and Sarah's protest grew louder.
Lies. She's deceiving you, Dad.
Don't believe Amanda.
James looked at them coldly, clearly fed up. I had no time for their charade. To end this, I took out the evidence from my bag. Look at this, my bank statements and the promissory notes. I had them right when lending money.
That's a lie.
David stammered, trying to grab the evidence from me, but I handed it all to James. In fact, I showed them all at home, but James reacts as if he's seeing them for the first time.
What's this? You borrowed money from Mom? That's not what I heard.
There's a reason for that.
What's the reason?
David stiffened as James's voice grew colder. James, always strict, must have instilled fear in him. Sweating profusely, David struggled for words. It was for gambling money, right?
What are you talking about, Mom? That's ridiculous.
Really? But you were on TV today.
What?
I showed them photos from my phone. I recorded a snippet of the show on my phone. David and Sarah appeared several times, wearing the same clothes as they were right now. Their faces turned pale at the photos.
That must be someone else who looks similar. This isn't proof.
You can't tell if it's us from that.
Ignoring their denial, I presented several more photos. The photos contained pictures of him going in and out of the casino. Actually, I hired a detective to follow you, David, Sarah. They found out you've been going to the casino several times a month.
What's this?
They were speechless at the photos and investigation report. Also, the lie about infertility treatments. You haven't visited any clinic for months.
Got anything to say?
Realizing there was no escape, David sighed and feigned nonchalance.
I thought you'd be easy to deceive, Dad.
What did you say?
I laughed so hard when you called in panic because of my email. If I knew it was this easy, I should have asked for money from you from the start, Dad.
David's mocking laughter made James clench his fists on his lap.
Did you enjoy deceiving me and your mom? Oh, it was hilarious. If only Mom hadn't been so perceptive. We wanted to win more.
Really, we could have earned so much more.
David and Sarah showed no remorse. Stop mocking your parents. Do you even realize you're doing something wrong? What? Borrowing and lending money within the family is fine, isn't it? Don't sweat the small stuff. Borrowing money? You don't even repay what you owe. Shut up. It's natural for parents to financially support their children, right? Don't make a big deal out of it. David seemed to think it's okay to do anything because we're family. But reality isn't that forgiving. I decided to confront David with the harsh truth. Listen, even within a family, lying to borrow money can be considered fraud, you know. Fraud? Yes, you tricked me out of money. I'm consulting a lawyer, so you might hear from the court soon. The mention of court panicked David, so I pressed on. The lawyer says there's a potential for fraud charges because the promissory note says it's for infertility treatments, but you never went for any. Then let's sue. David stood up as James spoke calmly. Wait, sue your own son? Are you really that heartless? What? You swindled money from us? And you're saying that? I know what I did was wrong, but wait on suing, please. Then will you repay us? Silence fell over David. It seemed he lost at betting again today. I don't have any cash on hand right now. I'm really struggling for money. I know. The detective said you might be in debt. So you're in debt. Having a hard time repaying. That's why you can't pay us back anytime soon. I squeezed David's hand, feigning sympathy. How sad. We didn't realize you were suffering so much. Sorry. Yeah, as parents, we should have paid more attention. We need to guide you to the right path from now on. James gently patted David's back. Mom, Dad. David's voice was pitiful. We smiled at him. First, admit your wrongdoing and repay the money. That's important. Why does it have to be that way? Borrowing means repaying. Teaching you the right thing to do is our duty as parents. We resolved to provide no further financial support. It's time for them to manage on their own, like adults. Come on. David and Sarah were visibly disappointed. Eventually, they were ordered to repay all the money they borrowed from us. James, of course, also cut off all financial support for David to prevent further gambling addiction. It's our duty as parents to guide them onto the right path. David and Sarah started working longer hours to repay their debts. Too busy to even think about gambling, they were considerably thinner. Sarah wanted to divorce to escape the debt, but David refused. With no money to hire a lawyer, they couldn't even afford a divorce and continued their married life. Despite their apologies, I had no intention of forgiving them. Adults must pay for their mistakes. A few months later, James finished his overseas job and officially retired. Having working non-stop, James had many things he wanted to do in retirement and recently got into camping. We went camping by a lake the other day. We really enjoyed our time together for the first time in a long time. With the money James had sent me and his retirement funds, we weren't financially troubled. We planned to spend our remaining years leisurely, just the two of us.